Welcome, Gillian, to the 29ers Unscripted, another episode. This one's quite a special one for me because it's about AI. Everyone's talking about AI right now, and really want to focus on why human creativity matters more than ever in this AI era. Okay. Really, I think that's important to talk about how we become involved and what's the outcomes of this.
So if you think of it, rather than focusing on what can AI do, what I would really love to extract from this episode is what becomes more valuable because of AI. Not what it can do, it's about what the value that AI brings from a business perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you good with that?
So you've got some questions?
I am prepared. So I want to, first of all, Kev, let's just really jump into this. When you think of being in the creative industries, you've been in the creative industries a little bit longer than me, because when you started, I was in finance.
We just worked out it's 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years.
1986. And yet 1986, you think, that's not that long ago. And then you realise it's 2026.
Yeah.
So it's 40 years we've been in the creative industries.
I'm just behind you because I started in the creative industries when I started to work with you in 1998. So I'm 30 years in the creative industries. You're 40 years in the creative industries.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so let's get started. First of all, let's start big. Are we entering the most creative era ever, and why?
100%, and it's actually something that just puts a smile to my face. It makes me really excited, and I think that's generally where I've been for 40 years. Everything that comes and becomes new, whether it's technology and design, just genuinely gets me excited. But I think now we need to really redefine creative, like the bottleneck from execution to judgement. 10 years ago, a great idea was because you just couldn't have the time to build it. You could have great ideas, but finding the time to build that idea. But now ideas can ship really fast with AI. And so the scarce thing for me isn't how to make things, it's like how fast you can make things now, and the speed how we can generate and how we can create ideas and then actually make them and bring them to life with AI. It's super exciting. So that bottleneck has moved from execution to judgment, and judgment is really important now in AI. The taste, the judgment, I think that's critical.
But even if you think of back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, back then when you had an idea and you wanted to innovate, the idea would die because it wouldn't have the resources or the energy or the even capability to be able to bring it to life.
Yeah.
What is that going to really mean to businesses?
What, the speed of it? Yeah. I think you can just now, you can iterate faster, you can generate really smart ideas. I mean, the work we produced even in the last month is the best ever work we've ever done.
We say that every month, but you're right.
But it is, and it's just getting better and better. And I've always said, what we're doing now is the worst it'll ever be. But I'm genuinely excited about AI and how humans play the part in that AI.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So what's changed most in the creative industries over the last few years, and where are we sitting in that? Because when you think of even going back to 2023, 22, even rewinding back even further to 2020. Remember sitting in the garden in Mallorca when we were deep diving in what's coming next while we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Let's make that in context to what's changed in the creative industries and where are we sitting in that evolution as a company, 29?
Well, I think, we're probably going to say this a few times, but I think speed is the number one thing that's changed. You still need the idea, you still need to generate that idea in your head, and it's what I've been talking to the team about, is we need to be more of that ideas company, because the speed of creation now has kind of flattened. It's but the speed of ideas as well, is you can now generate those ideas really, really fast. So I think that's where I'm coming at it from, is just that speed of change. Even every day you wake up and there's new tools to learn. But AI isn't just that press the button and things happen. There's still so many things to learn and so many things to integrate, and that's where I think it's really important that you keep the human in that loop. And we talk about that all the time, Gillian, how the human needs to be kept in the loop.
Yeah. When you talk about that big red button, and it made me laugh when you spoke, because must have been about 8 months ago or 10 months ago, and you showed me a video, and it was the conception and the preconception that AI is just you hit a button and out it pops. And the video that you showed me, it did. The guy pressed the red button and out pops some creative, but then it rewound and it unveiled and it took you through maybe 100 processes to get to that, press the button till it comes out. That's the bit that I think that is not as misunderstood in the creative industries from client side, who don't need to know how to do that process. But they never asked us how to do the process before. When you think of all the tools that we've used, from you started your career using Photoshop when Photoshop didn't even have a number behind it. It was Photoshop.
Photoshop didn't even have layers at the point.
Yeah, and I remember that. Yeah. So right now, the customer groups, they don't actually care what the process is. They just care, are you going to give me content that's going to work? Are you going to help me achieve the goal of the campaign or the goal of the problem we're trying to solve? The way that you do it, as long as you're doing it in a really safe and secure and enterprise-led way, that's where I feel that we're sitting at a really strong edge.
Yeah, so, and I think that's important. Like, everyone's playing with AI right now. Generally speaking, everyone you talk to is playing with AI, but we've took it to the enterprise level, and it still requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill, and just a lot of learning. And that's just, you have to always be curious. Whether you're a creative person in any discipline, you need to stay curious to learn all the time. And I think that's what we've done for the last 2 or 3 years, is really go deep in AI, but take it to the enterprise level. So as you said, we're still using a whole selection of tools. Yeah, the speed of things is a lot faster. You can generate ideas faster, but there's still a lot of learning to be done to get it right for the customer.
You know, what you've said it quite a few times. We're at a point right now that this is the worst it's ever going to be, because it is only going to get better. But that then leads me on to my next question. What do you think people are getting wrong right now about AI? And I want to give you a little bit of context where I feel about this question. I think people don't understand what it actually is. I don't think people are understanding what its capabilities are, and I don't think people are understanding the actual shift that it's making, not just in the creative industries, but every industry. And I've been in multiple meetings in the last probably 2-3 weeks, particularly where AI is a hot subject, whether that's, you know, in recruitment and finance and banking. It is a hot subject. And some of the people that I've been having conversations with are really senior people who have got no idea of what's coming. No idea. And that, in one breath, terrifies me, but also lets me see the opportunity that we've got as an agency to stay relevant, and an opportunity that we've got to educate our customers, because that's something that we've always done, is make complex simple. So we're just using artificial intelligence in a contextual way, not to replace this quality of creativity that we bring, but to enhance the speed of that. So where do you think people are getting it wrong?
I think you use the word replace. People see sometimes this as a replacement, but we see it as a collaboration tool. It really is a collaboration tool for us, AI. And the model, whatever model you're using, or a combination of AI models, it finishes like your sentence, but it still has to start somewhere. And I think that's the thing that you talked about, is like what's misunderstood. You still need a strategy, a clear strategy. Just because you can do things faster doesn't mean it's better, unless you've got a clear strategy. So making complex simple. So it's very important that us, the humans, are at the start of that process to come up with a clear strategy, a creative strategy for the customer, and then use those collaboration tools. Just like we said we used in the past, we used tools in the past, but these AI tools now should be the collaborator for us rather than the replacement.
And there was an article that you highlighted to me recently, and it was about, if you put rubbish or crap into an AI, all you're going to get faster is an output that's more rubbish and more crap.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think you still need to understand what's the what and why, and what do the customer need. You know, because again, you can get carried away and you can go down that black hole of AI tools and just generate noise. And we've talked about that as well. There's a lot of noise out there with AI, and how you need to focus on the signal. And the signal for this particular part of the conversation, the signal is, what does the customer need? And how can you give variations to that? And I think more personalisation now, because we've got these tools, you can be a lot more personalised with the content you create. But I think very, very clearly for us, it still requires a clear strategy of what the customer wants.
Plus also, sometimes the customer doesn't know what they need, but they know what they don't need. Because when you present a creative idea to a customer, if it doesn't land with what's in their goals, because at the end of the day, the customer comes to us with a very clear brief. They might not know specifically what content we're going to create, what videos we're going to create, what teardowns or 3D animations we're going to create. They maybe don't know that bit. That's not their job to know that bit. Their job is to understand how do they take their products to market and how do they do that with a contextual strategy of content and messaging to wrap around that. That's where we then add real value by having the ability to do it faster and more economical for our customers.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, the temptation is just to jump in and use the tools, but it's very, very important that you've got that clear strategy. And I think that's where we will always win with our customers, because we build that trust through our strategy and through the work we put into strategy. But now we've just got a different suite of collaboration tools that is AI, but as I said earlier, on an enterprise level that really supports and helps the customer.
Absolutely. So if everyone can create content now, what actually stands out? You talked about noise. What actually stands out? Because it then takes me back to everyone in the business world has access to Microsoft. Everyone, whether you use it as a full-on tool, but everyone uses Microsoft. So we have the whole suite of tools. If you're Apple people like us, you've got the whole suite of Keynote and all the Apple products, or Google. We've got the whole deck of Google. We've got information overload with tools to be able to create content. Okay? So if everyone can create content now using AI, what will stand out?
What stands out is having a point of view, having a real opinion that's held by a real person or a human. Everything is generic now. It's free. Most tools start off with free, and you can create generic content, but then the generic content that everyone's creating has no real value anymore. So if your work could be made by anyone, it probably was. So it's really been about having a specific opinion and a point of view of what you need to produce for the customer. And I think that's really important with the kind of tools that we've got.
But see, if you think of even in the last maybe 6 years, maybe even shorter than that, the influencer market. The influencer market hit really at a point where an industry was emerging, but it emerged so fast and overnight that we have the YouTubers and the influencers that have came into the market and made a ton of money because they've now created a new market. You don't need actors, you don't need celebrities. Sometimes the influencers and the YouTubers are actually more financially sound and more known than some of the Hollywood actors that we all know. So when you think of right now, what is AI doing to that market? Because that has emerged within the last 5-6 years. Where do you see that? And I know this is a question that we hadn't really planned, but where do you see that? Because you think...
See what specifically?
Right, so what is AI going to do to the influencer market?
I don't think even just... Yeah, that's one lead question about influencer market, but I think it's just going to disrupt every market, every single market. And I think that's our job, is to make sure that allow it to disrupt us, but be there with that disruption. We talked about blue ocean strategy, red ocean strategy, and the red ocean is where everyone's currently at, and everyone's trying to basically just cut everyone from a cost point of view and a creative point of view. So trying to put your business in that blue ocean, so it's thinking ahead. So I think it's just a worldwide disruption in the creative industries across every part of it is happening. And sometimes it will sneak up on us, and sometimes it just lands. And I think as part of our job is to make sure it doesn't sneak up on us. So every single day we're trying to learn new tools and new ways of working that benefit our customer, because that's our end goal. Is everything we do has to benefit our customer. Yeah. And if that's using AI tools or traditional tools, it's irrelevant to the customer. They just need to make sure that we continue to build that trust and allow that disruption to happen. But the most important thing is to be part of that disruption, be part of that wave, be part of that blue ocean thinking.
But if you go back to what you said at the start of this conversation, it was about speed. So when you think back to the 40 years ago when we started our career, the speed of change in an industry was years. When an industry was evolving and it was changing, it would take years to mature. It would take years to develop into something. Then that years started to become shorter, and it started to become like 6 months to be able to come up with an idea and then develop that idea. And a project would maybe go through a cycle of 36 months to get it into a market. A whole sector of influencer and content creation, boom, emerged. And all those individuals are now at risk because all that content that was created by a human has now in some respects, is capable of being replaced by AI. So that as fast as that industry has evolved, that industry could disappear.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely spot on that all industries are going to be touched. Some will be completely flattened and some will evolve, and roles will evolve. Even right now, we're on a recruitment drive right now. And even when you look at the roles that I'm writing job descriptions for, didn't exist even 7 months ago. So it's the speed of change. It's the speed of change in every industry, in every shape or form. So if you think of what's going to become more valuable for a company of like 29, we're a Scottish company headquartered here in Scotland. We work internationally with global clients. We're in a very fortunate position that we've had a whole breadth of experience working inside corporate organisations, but as an agile boutique company. Where's the value proposition that we can take to these customers who have the breadth and knowledge and the most innovative solutions in the world?
Yeah.
It is such a privilege to work with these customers. But what can we give them that's valuable?
Well, it's just that I talked about it earlier. It's understanding the signal is more important than the noise, because everyone is getting consumed with the volume of types of content, types of applications that's out there. And then in that world of infinite content, the strategy behind what you're making has to be locked in before you make anything. And I've touched on that, but it has to be completely locked in. And that's what we do. We've always done that. So although we talk about disruption, the thought process of how we operate in our business is not being disrupted. It's the execution of it that's being disrupted. So, if we, the creators who win aren't the ones that's producing the most. They're the ones that know exactly why the piece exists and why you're building it. And we're just using different tools to do that. So I think that's, again, reiterating that point, that it's really, really important that we focus on building the things that matter most to our customers. Because you can build things faster, an infinite amount of pieces of content, it could just become, as I say, a complete noise to the customer. So we cut through that and we give the customer exactly what they want. But as we talked about, you can produce those ideas faster, so it tightens that kind of loop a little bit as well for the customer to understand what they're getting and what it might look like. And it's clearer and sharper in focus of what we can produce for them, and we can show them that a lot cleaner and a lot faster than we've ever done.
Yeah, and even showing them it cleaner and faster. If you think of what's becoming really valuable in a world of infinite content, if you think of the creative trifecta of quality, speed and price, it has always been a challenge to be able to do all three, because if they want really high quality, then that comes with a time to develop the idea and create the idea, and it comes with a price because there's a lot of human interaction involved in that. The AI has changed the game. Quality, speed and price now is achievable. And there is so many agencies, and I was in a panel recently where we talked about our companies, agencies, passing that value back to the client. And the overall consensus is no. Agencies are holding that value and holding that price. But why? That quality, speed and price, if you can reduce the cost where companies are trying to improve their margin, if you can enhance the quality and deliver it faster, surely agencies should be taking that approach.
Deliver it faster and better. I think from a creative side, it's as I said earlier, it's the best work we've ever produced, but it's also the fastest we've ever produced. But to make things at speed, you need to understand what you're doing. And I think that goes back to the red button thing again. Like, there's a whole learning curve here. And that learning curve, as you touched on earlier, used to be months or years. Now you have to create that, learn the curve in a matter of days to then implement it. So even when you go back, not 40 years, but maybe 20, when we were invited to Google I.O. To present our kind of slide deck, and Google were always the company who just constantly shipped to the customer, because that's how they learned and how they got feedback. So it's the same kind of thing now. We're producing a lot more content, a lot more faster, but it means we can get it to the customer faster, as I said a minute ago, so it can tighten the loop of feedback and we can make things faster. But to do that, you still need a full understanding of how AI operates. You come from an engineering background in your family. You like to reverse engineer how things actually work. I like to almost just see what they make. So that combination is we're always looking at, as I said, the strategy of what we're producing for the customer and the value add and the ROI, because I think at the end of the day, a customer just doesn't want more content. They want to make sure it's going to work for them. So the return on investment is really important. And that's even more measurable now with the tools that we're using.
100%. And even when you think of the way that you and I interact with each other, and I've joked about this recently, where we talked about in our early days when we were 29 years old and we started our business, I would sell it, you would make it. I would go out to the market with ideas and I would go and meet with business people. Had never ran a business before. My parents ran a business, so I was grown up with the business DNA in me, but I'd never ran a business. But I would go out and meet with customers and establish, well, what problems do you have? They would tell me about their problems, and then my creative brain would innovate, well, what if we could do this? And then I would sell that idea, and you and I would work together, and you would then come up with, how do we actually create that? And we were building things back in 1998 that were so innovative back then. Imagine if we were able to have had AI at the start of our business career. For example, you talked about when we launched Moviecom, that platform that was a real passion of mine when we started that company. We spent 4.5 years with that brilliant idea. We took it and we had the opportunity to take it into Google, and we talked to YouTube about it. And we spent 4.5 years from idea to go to market. If we were coming up with an idea, I'm not saying we're doing that because that bus is past, but if we had an idea to do something like that now, you could do that in 4 weeks.
Yeah, probably even faster. And I think...
No, but from an idea to actually shipped and go to market and win a client, you could do it in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
or less. But 4 weeks, I think
it's a whole different business model for ideas now.
Yeah.
And you're almost, as you said, you used to go out and sell and I would make it. But my job is not about making things anymore. It's almost like about directing things. And to direct things, like direct creativity, you're directing creativity using the AI tools. So the AI tools are your agents, are your creative agents. So to be able to create that type of content or those type of apps that we did in the past, you need to be more of the director now within the creative industry. So, and then direct the AI tools and what to make. But it's also good to understand how things are made. Because I think that helps the communication, because obviously with AI tools, you need to still communicate to them. Now you can communicate through your voice or through typing, so it's very important that you're very clear, even as a creative person now, you're very clear in the brief that you're trying to give the tool.
But I think even when you think of, just as a small analogy, when you first started your career, when you were on a drawing board, you were using Letraset, so you know font and how to manipulate and manage a font, and how it was constructed from its actual engineering baseline. Whereas nowadays, a font is just something you pick from a drop-down menu, and if you don't like it, you just change it. You don't really care. Yeah. You like it or you don't like it. So when you think of the learning journey that we've had the opportunity to be on, to have went through all these just evolutions of search and social and Web3 and now the convergence of technologies and disruptions, how do you think that the market, how do you think the young generation are going to cope with this coming into this field?
I think, do you know what, I actually think they'll cope better because, again, it's your environment. If you're growing up in the right environment as a young person, you're around people who are learning AI or doing things, you don't know any different. I feel it's an advantage that you said, like, I understand the structure of a font and why it's there and the story of that font. And it then blends into why I create something, is because I always think there needs to be a story behind it. Because when you go and try and pitch to a customer, you don't just show them the work. You have to frame up why you've done it. You have to tell them the story of why this piece exists. So I think that's the part that I think the younger generation maybe need to reframe as maybe storytelling. I think technology-wise, they know nothing different. Like, they didn't, nowadays they grew up with internet. So I think it's natural for them to, again, if they're around the right people, to want to learn and always learn. And then always have, again, our generation had a fear of failure. Especially in Scotland, you weren't allowed to fail. If you failed, you should just give up and then do something different. Where our culture was born from was in America. If you fail, it's almost like a badge of honour. It's like, well, they've failed 5 times, so they're most likely to get it right the 6th. Whereas in Scotland, if you failed once, just go and do something else, change a career. So I think younger people are more into, like, well, it didn't work, so I'll try something else, and just constantly change until they find the thing that works. So I think technology-wise, they'll glide through it, the transition, where I think the focus for them has to be is how do you tell the story? How do you make that story come alive with what you've done? And so I think storytelling is going to be more important moving forward, because the tools, let's be honest, the tools are getting easier to use. As I said earlier, there's a learning curve, but once you break through that, you can generate at speed. But it's about how you tell that story to the customer. You know, every time we do a pitch or present our work, you have to tell that story. You have to communicate. So I think that's where the younger generation, maybe we grew up with storytelling. You sat with people, you talk to people every day. There's probably less face-to-face communication with the younger generation in our work environment, because probably most of them work remote. So when then they're having to do that presentation, I think that's probably the skill I think that will be more important moving forward, is storytelling.
And the human interaction, I think that's where the younger generation might have a slight disadvantage. They will have lots of huge benefits and bigger advantages because of the fearlessness of being young and thinking, you know, I can just, when you're young, you can mess it up. You've got loads of years to fix it.
But I think AI can create most things, but it can't create the original story. There's a human part to that. Yeah, you can, if you communicate with AI, it can help you generate and frame the story, but you have to understand from a human level what people want to hear. Yeah. And I think that's really important. That's an important skill, I think, that people should learn and not forget, is how to tell a story.
I think that the storytelling, and particularly in the creative industries, you're selling ideas and you're conceptualising and visualising things that don't exist. And that's probably been the thing that in our entire career I have really loved, when there's a challenge, a customer needs to try and innovate something and communicate that, especially when it's complex. Having the skills, the natural skills, and you and I have equal complements of natural skill, and how do we develop the customer's idea into something that they can take to market to sell their products and services. AI is not replacing that. It's just letting us do it faster. Yeah, really. Right, let's move on to the next question. So, what do you think people still crave real experiences, and why do live events feel even more important?
Well, we've just back from an event. We're just about to go to another one. And I think the more digital life gets, the more we'll pay for the opposite. I think there'll be like that opposite shift, because we spend most of the normal working day digitally, whether it's on screen and communications and Teams or Zoom or whatever. But I think then people will start to crave more and more the opposite, to get together, especially from a business-to-business point of view. We're just back from one, and it was that kind of like people haven't seen each other for like 6 months or a year. So the natural vibe and buzz and enthusiasm of getting together. So when you get people together for an event, you need to give them a real life experience. Now, that real life experience can also include, like we've talked about, virtual reality tours of places that they can't visit or can't get to. But I think it's really important that events, I think, will be critical in the next few years for people to use that as they get together. And I think that will become really important.
But do you think the behaviour, if you think pre-pandemic, and I've mentioned pandemic before, but pre-pandemic, everyone worked together predominantly. A lot of global organisations that were a bit decentralised had people work remote, and that was quite a common thing before the pandemic. But the whole of the world had to go into that remote environment, and the whole of the world had to change their behaviours literally overnight. And we did it. You and I went and had 2 years in the beautiful mountains of Mallorca. Well, we went really deep in learning. But if you think of, like, right now, we all came out of that and we all craved, without really realising it, but you craved and missed the social interaction of the water cooler moment, or being in a studio, just chatting about things in life. And what we've discovered also is that when we've been recruiting and bringing new team members into the company, people need that. Human beings need human interaction. Yeah, you can work from home, you can work remote, you could run 3 jobs and have sidelines and do all of that. But that's a really lonely, siloed life. Yet to be fully rounded, you need to have that whole experience. But and in the context of AI, what AI will do is it will give everyone back so much time, so that when you are at work or with friends and you're doing human things, all the crap that you don't like to do, tasks that are like mind-numbing tasks, send it to the AI.
Well, I think any task will become automated.
Yeah.
If it's something, a task for me tends to be something you repeat. So we'll just get the door. Well, we'll just keep recording. I think a task is something that is repetitive. So if you can automate that repetition, it allows you then to do the things that are more important. And I think memories and moments are going to become really, really important now. I think task-driven stuff was the thing that kind of ground down the human, because you were just doing a job that was very task-driven. But I think what we're looking for now is those memories and those moments, and those come to life at events or being in an office together. As you said, we can all work remotely and do the task remotely. But what being together creates is the memories and moments and the creativity. And whether that's in an office or at an event, I think that's really important.
Yeah. And you think of, from a business perspective, and clients who all go to expos, symposiums, congress, we help our customers be on the stage. We help our customers to shine. That experience, and we're hearing this and we've heard this quite significantly in the last couple of years, the importance. It's not often about going to an event so that they can sell products. It's about being at an event so that they're seen, so that they can be in their around their peer groups, they can be with their customers, they can be with their stakeholders. But it's also that human aspect. And because AI is a very hot topic right now and everyone's talking about AI is going to take all our jobs, it will never take all our jobs.
I'll take the current jobs, but it'll create so many more new ones. So you need to be open to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to rephrase that. I don't mean it's going to take all our jobs. It's just going to give us time. It's going to give us back so much more if you think of it from that perspective. Instead of spending something that Steve Bartlett put a video up all about time and how many hours and months you've got in your lifetime. And when you break it down between your work time, your sleep time, your task time, your entertainment time, if you can then look at whatever age you are, I'm 57, so if I'm lucky to stay here till I'm 100, I've got half my life left. But of that, I know I'm very optimistic, but I've still got half my life left. Do I want half my life to be doing tasks that I absolutely hate doing? Absolutely not. So if I can find a way to process my own life, that all the things that I hate doing can get done by AI, that gives me time to travel and innovate and create.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. All we want to do is convert what AI can do to allow you more time, to allow you to spend more time, for talking from a business point of view, to allow you more time with your customer. Mm-hmm. I think what we always focus on as well is how do we spend more time with our customer? We're going out next week to New York to spend time with our customer. And that brings an element of trust and connection with the customer. And I think that's really important, because that's the number one asset for me is obviously time. And then in a business sense, the number one asset in a business sense is building trust. And you can only do that by having the human connection. What we build away from that trust and connection is task-driven content. Yep. And that's the system that we're building for our customers, using the AI kind of enterprise level tools as systems and content systems and things like that, so that we can generate a better quality of product for them, but also that we can spend more time with them generating ideas and innovation. And that, just as I said, that builds trust and builds connection with them. And as you say, let's get rid of the tasks that bog you down to give you more time to come up with ideas that benefit the customer.
And be creative. And why do you think brands still need that human connection? Because you think of a brand, even any manufactured product, the product is the one thing. It's how it's packaged. And I know we are very fortunate to work in the packaging industry with some of the leading companies in the world. The packaging aspect of it is what makes a product stand out on the shelf. The component part inside that, for instance, a shampoo. A shampoo is a liquid that sits inside a container, whether that's a clear or a coloured container. What makes that brand stand out is the packaging. The packaging is what you connect with. You connect with what that packaging and what that brand stands for visually. So
what's the question?
So the question is the human aspect. Yes, AI can come in and create a whole raft of assets and messaging, but the human part of that brand creation is the idea.
But it's the human part that builds the trust. Like, obviously, I'm a big Apple fan, and that brand, you only become a brand if you've built trust. And for me, those products work. And there's a lot of effort into making them work. So for us and our customers, we want to simplify the products that we can give them, but make them just work.
So you think then that if you think of what AI can give to the brand owners, it gives them more time to ship more products to their customers by staying relevant and staying human with that customer, because people connect with people. And I think that's really important.
Yep.
So another question here, what does great creativity actually mean? And I'm emphasising the word great, because you can be creative and output absolute crap, but it's still creative. What does great creativity look like?
This is irrelevant to AI, but I always think what we try and do with our customers, make them feel something. Again, everyone can produce pieces of content, but it goes back to what I said earlier about storytelling and make people feel something. And you can only do that by being face-to-face again. So every event that we do, it's about how we make our customers feel. And that's just the customer experience part of our business. We've talked about that in previous podcasts about customer experience, and that's still the thing I think that we have to keep focused on our business is the customer experience. You just take that into any part of your own personal life. Without realising, you judge things on the experience you have. Yeah. Not what you eat or what you buy, but the experience you might get from that, going to the restaurant or the product you buy. What experience does it give you? If it makes you feel something, you'll buy it again. Yeah,
because even if you go for dinner and you have a terrible meal, but the restaurant are really great at fixing the problem, you'll still go back. But we've been to many restaurants where the food has been fabulous, but the service and the experience has been rotten, really shocking, and you don't go back. So it is all about the experience and what you feel from that. Now, can AI give that? Can AI make you feel?
We've said, I think AI will just do things at speed. I don't think, obviously, we talk about maybe in a future episode there's AGI and the kind of super intelligence of it. But right now, it's about transforming your idea faster. But it still needs. The human part of it still needs to make people feel something, so and really, that's the human connection. That's what we talked about. The human needs to be at the start of this process and needs to be the end. The part in between, again, reiterating the task-driven stuff, will be replaced by AI. Yeah. But we need to make sure the customer is at the start of this journey with us. We create the task-driven, AI-driven content in the middle. But the customer still gets that experience of how it made them feel at the end. Yeah. I think that's really important.
So if you think of things like empathy and emotional intelligence, those are two really strong, positive statements. Empathy and emotional intelligence, they're becoming superpowers. Now, there is an argument that AI can and maybe will in the future be able to develop those skills because of the learning that's happened from the human. But why do you think that these are really important right now in the creative industries?
Well, I think I go back to presenting. I think a lot of in the creative industry it's about how you present your work, how you represent yourself inside that meeting, and I think that's the part that obviously AI can't do. It can't be in the room with you, and it helps you present visually, but it doesn't help you present, as you say, with empathy or emotional intelligence. And what I've said for a number of years is read the room. It's just an old expression of you need to read the room. So when you go into any business meeting, you're reading the room, you're understanding the vibe, the tension, the excitement. You know, every time we do an event, because there's a really good feeling, a really good buzz. AI can't tell that and can't read that. So you need to build your content that allows you to shape your presentation or reframe your presentation. That again goes back to making the customer feel something. So again, AI won't replace that. I don't see that anytime soon, but it'll just give you more tools and more flexibility in how you present. But again, going back to the point of storytelling is going to be critical, because storytelling will help you get there, help you read the room, help you get that customer experience right. And even when you leave that presentation, you learn so much from the unspoken things. You know, AI listens for things that are spoken and things that are obviously said and things that are written down, but it doesn't feel. AI doesn't feel. No. And I think you can be in a room and you feel something, without anything being said. And that can be a trigger of what you create next. And it's something you just get a feeling for. People say gut feeling. So I think AI will just replace the tasks again. I think it won't replace the feeling.
Well, that's a conversation that we'll maybe save for another podcast where we'll talk about consciousness and is it possible
that
for
seems
AI?
Like a completely different podcast.
Totally different podcast, but is AI capable of having a consciousness and a conscience? And I think it does, but we'll talk about that another time.
I think it's everything. It's going to be really difficult. Like maybe going back a few years, you could have predicted like where's your business going to be in 5 years or 10 years. I think that's more difficult now. You'll always predict, but I think where my focus is what can we change and what impact can we make for a customer now, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, and if you keep iterating at those small little micro levels, you'll get there. Where that might get to in 5-10 years, I do think it's quite impossible to tell. But if you keep in touch with your customer every day, every week, every month, or every creative decision is connected to the customer, you'll go on the journey together.
Yeah.
And then that's again building the brand, building the trust, and you're using those tools in AI. So I think AI has become a central focus of conversation, but where we're trying to decentralize that is still, the conversation still has to be about the customer.
Yeah.
And irrelevant to the tools that we might use. But what we'll try to debunk a little bit today is it'll still need the human. It'll still need the human to feel and sense what's going on and make the right decisions.
But then when you think of it, human beings just as a species, we always try to do things. How can I do this quicker? How can I do this faster? How can I do this smarter? How can I spend less of my energy doing this task so that I can go and do something that I really love doing? That's what AI gives us.
Yeah.
Yet people are terrified of it. It's just about a mindset shift to think, how can I leverage this? How can I leverage this, one, on a personal level, so that I can have more time with my family and my friends? And how can I leverage this on a business that I can add more zeros onto my customers' balance sheets and our balance sheet? It's like a no-brainer.
But we've been there long enough. We've seen people use the word terrified. I think it's just a fear of the unknown. And in business, you like to have a sense of, as I say, predictability. You like to think that you know what's going to come. And I think our first sense of that was 6 years ago when COVID hit. I said at the time, like, why you go into business? Because you want to be in control of your own destiny. When COVID hit, it was the first time we felt we're not in control of this. Like, we can't move, we can't we can't fly here and visit our family. We were kind of stuck. So it was the first sense of being an entrepreneur that we weren't in control. And I think there's an element of, when you talk about fear with AI, there's an element of we're not in control. Like normal businesses, obviously people who build the tools, but we're having to react to those tools that are getting presented to everyone. In the past, business tools were business tools, but these same tools are kind of being presented to everyone. So everyone does either be terrified of it or thinks it's easy.
And what group is it you think are being terrified? Because you think there's 3 different layers. I always see things in layers. You've got the makers of AI. Those are building all the language models. You've got the creators with AI. We're a creator with AI. And then there's the consumers. Those that don't really know how to use it, don't know what to do with it, but every day are using AI. Of those 3 categories, which one is most at risk?
All of them. The question was like, what ones are terrified? Again, I think it's just... I've thought about along the lines of this question, like who's terrified, who takes advantage, but I think it comes back to your environment. Your environment being is, who do you place yourself around every day? And if you're around, hopefully in this type of company, we're excited about it. But there's also an element of like, well, if we don't get excited about it, then there's a terrifying part of it. So we're trying to outweigh our excitement without being terrified. But if we just then went out the door of like, right, we're terrified, it would just breed that across the company. Whereas right now, I'm genuinely excited about it. But is there an element of like, well, is that going back to we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years? But if we keep iterating along that path, we'll keep moving along with it. And obviously, ultimately, to support our customers. So I think it's just whether it's AI or anything, it's like growing up. It's your environment, and where you grow up is how you... I'm older now, so you look back and think, where did I learn this or that trait or that little response, and how do I react to a situation? It's because of your family life, who you were supported with, who was the positive vibe in your house and who was the negative. That's the same in business. So for me, it's not a category thing. It's just we're excited about it. There'll equally be people who are terrified about it. But the only way to change that is to change your environment, change who's your supporting team. And if you want to be positive about it and be part of that future, then come join 29 Studios. But because we're excited about it, but there always has to be an element of we need to be careful. We need to not get complacent.
No.
And I think that's the curiosity that's always pushed us forward in business is we're never complacent, we're curious. And I think that applies to AI right now as well.
So I want to jump on to talk about younger creatives, the youth that's coming forward. But one observation as you were talking there, history repeats itself.
Yeah,
and
patterns.
Do you remember, it constantly does, it's patterns. Now let's rewind back to when you were in your first job, starting the creative industries 40 years ago. And you single-handedly converted that entire organisation that you were working with from the drawing boards to computer. And I remember you ordered the first Mac system for Avery Dennison, Cumbernauld, and it was like £80,000. It was like,
I'll correct because I remember the number specifically. It was £72,000 worth of Mac. No, just because it just sticks in my head, and that story just briefly was I was just the young guy in the office, and everyone was traditional drawing boards, and I was like, you need to go Mac, because we were starting to get little discs through from Big ESO and all these
technology was happening, technology was changing.
And no one knew what to do with the disc.
But my point was that your boss at the time was taking your artwork, your discs, and putting them in the bin because he was fearful that you were going to bring a technology into the company that would make him redundant,
and to
not
stop
relevant.
him putting them in the bin, I then went and took a bank loan out and bought myself my first Apple Mac and took it home, and I took those discs home and made all that content for the business.
And you then went and spoke to the bigger bosses and told them what was happening, and then you helped that company go through change. And at that point, that was 32 years ago, because Caitlin was 1 year old and we had a baby, and she was putting paper clips in the drive.
Yeah, but I think the point is the fear thing. There's always going to be people who are fearful. And if that's the vibe they're going to give off in that environment, then they need to leave. Yep. And that was the transition I then took, was I can't be around these people. I'd worked with them for a few years on the drawing boards. They were a good few years older than me, so they were fearful of change. But I couldn't be part of that because I was excited for the change, and that change was computer, desktop kind of generation work.
Which the creative industries back then were up in arms about. We can't bring desktop publishing in, it's going to take all our jobs. And look what it did.
Well, it did take their jobs because they
transitioned their jobs.
Yeah, but it took their jobs because they never wanted to learn it. They were fearful. So I would say the moral of that would be is lose the fear and embrace it. If you want to be part of it and you want to be part of this next wave, you need to learn it. You just need to learn it. It's just a new way of learning. Right now I'm having to rewire the creative brain and how we build things. But I see it as exciting. I really see it as exciting. So yeah, it's that history repeats itself in patterns. And if I hadn't changed, if I had just stayed in my lane, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. But at that point, I was like, no, I need to do it. And we spoke and was like, let's go take a bank loan, buy a computer, and take that risk. And that risk led me to then being the creative director and taking over the whole place and buying the whole Apple equipment that I'd never put together. I had one little Apple Mac, and all of a sudden in reception, £72,000 worth of kit arrived, and I had to plug it all in and put it all together. It was a lot harder then than it is now. But
thankfully, there was a company called Scotsys. Yeah, they helped you do it. Yeah, brilliant. Right, going then on to a few more questions. What skills would you recommend that young creatives focus on right now?
Kind of touched on it earlier, but for the sake of clarity, I think taste, judgement, and communication. I think they said that if they're young and around the right environment, they'll learn faster than everyone. Because I have to rewire and rethink and stop doing what I used to do and do it the new way. They'll just do it the new way. But I think the most important thing that needs to be learned is taste. Because everyone can create things now, but you need to know what's right. You need to know the judgment. You need to know what you're looking for.
How do you get that skill? Is that the actual secret sauce, the golden nugget inside a creative mind, is having that taste? Because if you're not creative and can you develop that skill?
That's a big question. I've always had a creative element from a graphics point of view. Everyone's creative. I think everyone's got a level of creativity, but it's how deep you want to go with that. Again, I think as I brought up as a creative designer, but I then went deep into that learning period about fonts and everything. So I didn't understand that naturally. So I had the curiosity to go and find out about fonts and typefaces and layout and white space and everything that graphic designer would talk about. So if you don't still go deep in your subject matter, then it's not natural. You just wouldn't learn it. So I think it's curiosity rather than are you born as a creative. You can be born with an element of that, but you need to still go deep and learn the skill or the trade.
And I suppose that's probably why a lot of our clients who are amazing marketeers, but they're not creative executors. So they come to us to work alongside them with their marketing expertise, and we align that with our marketing expertise, but then we build that into incredible content.
Yeah,
so
I think for younger generation to gather taste, you need to experiment. You know, if you think about recipes or cooking, I don't cook, but I watch all the cook shows, but I don't cook. But it's just repetitive. It's the more you do something, the more you gather that taste, the more you gather that judgment. You can't just do something once and say, right, I now know how this should taste. I now know the judgment of this. You have to do it multiple times. It's just like anything, driving. When you first do your driving, you think, I'm never going to be able to change gear, look at the mirrors, look at everything. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. So I think that's how you build that creative spark, is by constantly tasting, by judging, and then communications we talked about. Like, it's going to be more and more critical that you learn a form of communication, how to convert that knowledge to the customer is all through communication.
So I've got a few other questions. There's a few here that we've already kind of covered, but what excites you most about the future of creativity? Not even just creative industries, but the future of creativity. And that's in the context to we can now create things in a different way. What excites you most?
I think there isn't one thing. There's probably just, again, going back to my own personal development. I always love to learn. I'm always looking at ways I can be better. And as we say, I think the tools are becoming... There's a vast amount of tools out there that help me become better. So again, the curiosity for me of just how do I become better? How do I then implement that into our company? And then how does the customer get the benefit of it? So that thread excites me. And obviously what we do here is make content, all forms of content. But it's now about how can we make content at scale for a customer? How can we personalise that content more for the customer's customer? And then how can it become so accurate in its measurement for the benefit of the customer, the ROI of that? So these are the things that are now starting to try to work out. How do we, and we're currently doing it, how do we build that content system for our customers? Not just a piece of content. How can we generate a content system for them that makes it easier for them to understand what they need? And then when they do get it from us, how they can implement it and what's the benefit to their end customer. So I think that excites me. Obviously, the layer underneath that is just constant learning how we take advantage using these tools. How do we create that blue ocean strategy for ourselves, for our team, and for our customers? So just always stay curious and always learn. I think that's
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that what excites me most about the future of creativity is the way that the mind has now got a different opportunity how you can construct a creative idea. Whereas before, and even up until the last year, you had a methodology of how you would get an idea from your head to a deliverable that you can send to a customer. That's changed.
Well, so many times do you say, it's in my head, I can see it. But now you can bring it out. It's so clear and so concise. And I think even you and I working together for 30 years together, I have never been able to be as hands-on the actual tools as you have been. I've always been in my head, creative strategy, big ideas, but I didn't have the ability. I did have the ability, I just didn't have the interest to learn those tools.
didn't have an interest. I learned Photoshop when it was Photoshop pre-number 1 and 2 and so on and so forth, and before layers, and I just wasn't my thing. Wasn't interested in learning that. I wasn't interested in how you implement the creativity. I was interested in coming up with the ideas. The ideas part is what really interested me. But right now for me, and you mentioned it earlier, from an engineering point of view, that's changed. The formation of creativity has changed because of AI. That's amazing. I am so excited about this. And I think that the future of creativity is going to be so much faster. AI is a gift. It has given us time. You're only here for a small amount of time. So if you can plug AI in to do the stuff that you don't want to do, that is the most creative output from AI is time.
Good.
So that's a great one. So, and finally, what will never change, no matter how advanced technology becomes, what will never change, in your opinion?
What will never change? A good idea. I think I've said it for the last couple of years since we started talking about AI, is like, AI will allow us more time to generate more ideas. Whereas the time you used to use in the studio was to create, is to make those products, but we're spending less time making them and spend more time thinking and coming up with ideas. So I think ideas will still be the thing that everyone focuses on. Like, what's the best idea? And because the best idea for me should always win. But then you need to take that best idea and you can create it now at speed. And I think, going back to the point of the companies that will win, the businesses that will survive, is the businesses that can generate at speed, but the right thing, with the right strategy, with the right feeling, with the right customer experience.
The right emotion.
But speed is going to be, because everyone's impatient now. Like, we all got a level of impatience, when we all first started our careers. Like, there was a lot more patience in the world with what we do. But people want things now faster. Everywhere you go, you want it faster. You get impatient if things are not delivered at speed in your personal life. So for us, it's about delivering at speed for our customers. But to do that, it still needs to be the right idea. Otherwise, as we said, it just becomes noise.
So lots of noise at speed.
It's really then making sure that signal that we give to our customer is the right one. So I think that the good idea is still rare. It's still hard to recognise. I think that's the skill still. Because people can learn AI. If you put in the time, like everything, you'll learn it. But it's still rare to recognise what's a good idea. And I think that still goes back to the DNA of who you are as a company, is generating ideas for your customers.
Yeah. And building ideas. I remember, I think it's in one of the books you've got, it was one of your early videos that you told us about, and it was Steve Jobs. And I think he was in one of his retreats, so it might have been a video, you showed me it. And he said in the room, I'll paraphrase it because I've not got it exactly, but it was something like, everything in this room that we are here today looking at exists because one day in the past, someone had an idea to create a microphone that does podcasts, a glass, a pen. Someone had an idea to create that. And that was like way before AI came into the mix. So when you think of the genius moments that people have, and to be able to be around people, and we've been very fortunate in our career to, rub shoulders with some of the most amazing people and the most innovative people. And I'm looking, as you're talking, at all the books that you've got behind that you've read, and all the brains and communications and conversations that we've had. And then what's going through my head is the genius moment. That's human. That's human creativity. The world exists today because
everything
of those
was made with humans.
creativity.
So AI didn't just come about. It's made by us. We're making this tool.
Yeah.
Not us, but humans are making this. So everything's created and generated by a human, and it's our chance to do something different for our customers now.
And it's to not be fearful, but to obviously be very mindful that we have to make sure that everything's safe and secure. We're following governance. We're being very mindful from an enterprise point of view, but we're only following the same protocols that we would do before AI, because we are always very mindful that when customers entrust us with highly confidential information, that we respect that and we don't share that. That's just a saying, just a go-to protocol in any business. So I think that just to wrap up on the session today, it's been really insightful. Some of the conversations even the conversations we have off camera, we don't know when to stop. We just constantly talk about how can we stay relevant, how can we add value, how can we give our customers more, and how can we help the next generation of young creatives come into this market, be fearless, and really enjoy being part of an industry that creates.
Well,
and that's what AI, I think, is going to help us.
Well, for me,
more.
just sum it up is like we talked about time today, and how time's your number one asset, how trust, how customer experience, how all of that. We talked in the past about work-life balance. But if you were to bring all that together and mash it all together, the only way you win and do all that in the best possible way is, and it is the thing we use, is love what you do.
You've got to love what you do.
Because you spend so much time in this type of environment, you spend so much time thinking about what's next and thinking what tools and how you create new products for customers. But you have to genuinely, I think more now, like in the past, you could do a job, you go home, and that was it. But right now, if you want to succeed in your career, whatever that career might be, you have to love what you do, because there's so much time now you have to put in. It's actually, ironically, AI can give you back time, but when it gives you back time, if you love what you're doing, you'll use that time to come up with more ideas. So
you need to physically switch off.
Yeah, but switch off to what?
To go and renovate your house.
I'm just meaning to just generate, like for us, it's always about what's next.
Yeah.
Now that what next tends to be aligned to where our business is going. But obviously that ultimately benefits personally. But I think for everyone else, it's like, try your best to find something that you actually love what you're doing, whatever that is. Because there's a niche now in everything. Yeah. You know, with the world we're living in, you can be successful in whatever it is you love what you're doing, because you spend so much time in that area. So for me, this is what we do. And I think we'll always do it because we love what we do. And we've just got timing because the door's going again.
And we're done.
So we'll
Thank you, Kevin. That was really, really good. Really enjoyed that. And we'll probably continue this conversation.
Could. But we'll leave it there.